Every generation inherits something, not just wealth, not just ideas, but things we choose to preserve. And the way we choose to leave things behind is becoming an increasingly interesting thing to tackle. Most people never stop to ask why. What happens when the largest transfer of wealth, which we're upon right now, when this wealth, part of that wealth is going to be transitioned in art? And what happens when the younger generation looks at the art from yesteryear and says, I don't want it? We are entering one of these transfers in history. Along with real estate, stocks, collectibles, and money comes artwork. For decades, physical art represented status, legacy, taste, a culture value. A painting on the wall wasn't just an object, it was a statement. It told a story about who owned it, where it came from, and why it mattered. But generational shift is happening now. The people inheriting these collections often grow up in a completely different visual culture, a culture built around screens. It's a different generation that is getting ready to take over. They are used to digital identities. Previous generations valued art on the wall, physical objects, provenance through galleries and auction houses, owning something rare in the physical world. You could point to an object, you could touch it, you could put it in a room. Younger generations grew up with digital identity, online communities, virtual spaces, algorithmic culture, and interactive media. Their identity often exists somewhere else. A username, a profile picture, a digital community, a world that does not require physical walls. And this creates the central question. What happens when one generation collects objects and another generation collects experiences? Before NFTs, digital art had no native ownership system. Digital artists had a problem before NFTs came along. The technology for creating digital art existed, the creativity existed, the artist existed, but ownership was missing. An artist could create something incredible, but there was no narrative, no way to prove it. Who created it? Which version was authentic? Who owns it? Its history, its legacy. A painting had a physical original, a digital file had copies. So the missing piece was not creativity. The missing piece was ownership of infrastructure. Digital artists began experimenting for decades. Since the 1960s, artists were using computers as creative tools. Generative artists were using code as a medium. Net artists were exploring internet native creation. The technology existed before the market. The question was, how do you create ownership in a world built on copying? In 2014 to 17, we had the birth of blockchain art. The first experiments began to emerge. One of the earliest examples is rare Pepes. For the first time, internet culture itself became collectible. A meme could become an artifact. The Bitcoin blockchain was no longer just about money. It became a place where culture could be recorded. Then came the breakthrough. Larva Labs created CryptoPunks circa 2017, 10,000 unique algorithmically generated characters. This was a free claim. On-chain ownership, scarcity enforced by code. CryptoPunks were not simply pictures. They introduced a bigger idea. What happens when identity becomes a digital object? The collectible was no longer only about what it looked like. It was about what it represented. In 2018 to 20, I'm going to take a sip of water. 2018 to 20, we had the artist infrastructure era, which was amazing. It was an ecosystem that started building the foundation for all digital artists. Super Rare introduced a curated approach. The focus shifted toward artists. Digital art was no longer only about collectibles. It became a place for individual creators. Async art introduced programmable artwork. Art could contain, for the first time, really, layers, dynamic changes, multiple owners influencing one artwork, AKA the artwork could evolve. Then came the generative revolution, which was amazing. Art blocks created a brand new category that took a moment to catch on. It was an algorithmic art generated mint. Important artists include Tyler Hobbs, Dmitry Cherniak, Eric Cauldron, AKA Snowfro. These collectors, the collector was not buying a finished image. They were buying a moment where code created something unique, AKA an output. Then we had the 2021 NFT explosion, and almost overnight digital ownership entered this mainstream conversation. Beeple created Everyday's 5,000 daily artworks, a years-long creative practice. Then a Christie's auction happened, and we saw a $69 million sale. The impact was enormous. The waves traveled through the entire art world, digital world, and it entered a it was the first time this type of digital art had ever entered a traditional auction house. At this moment, this is when museums began to pay attention. And suddenly every artist was asking, could digital ownership actually change everything? Bored Ape Yacht Club changed the idea of what an NFT could be. It moved beyond an art object. The NFT became identity for the first time, community, membership, as well as culture. In this era, the PFP had absolutely arrived. We saw CryptoPunks continue to command presence. Bored Ape Yacht Club, Azuki, Doodles, Moonbirds, CloneX. The NFTs became a new question. Who are you online? And wearing one of these NFTs was a badge of honor. Then, shortly thereafter, we had the crash of 2022 to 2023. The speculation cycle broke. The market exposed inherent flaws and problems in our culture. Thousands of derivative projects popped up, fake utility promises, short-term speculation, insatiable prices, but the technology remained. And that is the magical, important layer. The market separated into two categories, speculation and culture. The survivors had strong artists, communities, history, as well as innovation. The evolution, it became this moment when NFTs became dynamic. And this next phase moved beyond static images. Artwork began to change over time. Evolving metadata, changing visuals, collector interaction. These are all things that are possible to build into these smart contracts. The artwork became a process, not something you just owned, something that continued to live on and move forward with time. That's the amazing thing. Then we had the conversation change as things began to go mainstream. The question was no longer, can AI make images? The bigger question became, can code itself be an artistic medium? Generative art introduced ideas like algorithms as brushes, randomness as collaboration, collectors receiving unique outputs. I need a sip of water. And generative art gained a museum attention that had never existed before. It gained institutional collecting, and it gained academic recognition, meaning it is becoming part of the philosophy of how we train and incorporate new artists into the fabric of society. Then we have AI creators And they are making an absolutely major shift. The question now becomes, is the artist the person creating the image or the person creating the system? Is the model the brush or is prompting a creative act? The future artist may not only be a painter, they may be a coder, curator, director, system designer, or even somebody with impeccable taste. NFTs are becoming containers. This is the underlying tech that makes all of this shit so interesting. Ownership of an image is turning into ownership of a programmable digital object. What does that mean? Projects like Stockbrokers explore this idea where the NFT becomes a container. It is holding tokens, asset, financial positions, as well as a digital identity. The collectible is no longer static. It becomes something closer to a digital organism, and this itself is a creation of art. Sorry, another sip of water. All right, I'm almost through this stuff. This is a bunch of stuff I wanted to run through. Next, projects like Satari Must Die. They are representing another evolution. The artwork is not just an image. The artwork is the image, the mechanism, the community, as well as the transformation created by the community. The collector becomes a part of the artwork. The concept includes burning, sacrifice, evolution, scarcity creation, irreversible decisions, and the question changes now. The old NFT asks, what did I buy? The new NFT asks, what did I participate in creating? And with the rise of on-chain art, another project that is really cool is Normies. Again, the blockchain becomes the canvas itself. The important ideas here are permanence, provenance, and transparency. Historical record, it is all locked in on the blockchain. The artwork here is not hosted somewhere. The artwork exists as code, and that is magical as well. The future is not digital replacing physical. It is a digital world merging with a physical world. The next generation includes immersive installations, LED environments, kinetic sculptures, robotics, projection, interactive spaces. Beeple really represents this transition really well. The NFT was the beginning. The installation and immersive experience to me is going to be the next iteration and experience. Organizations like Node Foundation represent a shift as well. They're worth paying attention to. Dedicated digital art spaces, digital artists treated as contemporary artists. That is an important thing. Digital artists treated as contemporary artists. Physical infrastructure now is built around a digital culture for the first time. The new question is, when does digital art stop being a category and simply just become art? When we live and breathe this stuff, Marfa matters because art still needs gathering places. It provides physical community, artists meet up where they get to interact with collectors, as well as cultural exchange, generative art conversations. The internet created digital communities, but art still needs physical places for it to flourish. Where does all this stuff go next? The next generation moves away from PFPs, speculation, empty promises of utility, and it moves toward living artworks, AI collaborations, programmable assets, digital identities, financial layers, interactive experience, and provenance. That is what I had to put together for you guys today. And my final thesis is the first era of NFTs was about providing digital ownership. It was about proving that ownership existed, which from an artist's standpoint was amazing. The next era is about discovering what digital ownership allows us to create. The JPEG was the beginning. The programmable artwork is the future.
Moonlit nights, they're intertwined. The skylines of canvas, painting stories so grand. Dreams and whispers back to this warm, gentle band. Ripples beneath these city lights, dancing slow with a groove and a vibe that moves. Like a hidden show, we're wandering souls. Through sunset songs we flow. In a world that's vast, take it nice and slow. Wandering souls, where we go. Across endless shores where below journeys and echoes, stories long ago. Embracing moves that's etched in every stride. Finding peace in the rhythm where secrets hide. We got a reggae heartbeat bringing us alive. To the tune of the earth in this metal jive.